Scott Gilman of North American Mortgage. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning.
Scott has been with North American Mortgage for a number of years and is a consistent $45 to $50 million a year producer. And before we get started, everybody kind of likes to know, start the same way, where people came from. They have kind of an innate fascination, and kind of how you got in the business and when you got started.
Well, I'm a native Californian, born and raised right here in Southern California. I've done two things in my entire life. I was in the...
well, we can't talk about that one.
I'm sorry?
That's a joke. I said we can't talk about that. This is a family tape.
One business prior to this, and 13 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was living in an apartment who is now one of my best friends today, next door to a gentleman who got into the mortgage business. And his first month out, he came home and he showed me a paycheck after working for a month of $10,000, and I said, if you could do it, I could do it better. I went to school, I got my real estate license, and the rest is history.
Where'd you go to school?
I'd say real estate school to get my real estate license.
Oh, I see. And then you worked your way
into to work for a mortgage banker or a brokerage company. I opted not to work for a bank at that time, and so you had to be licensed in order to either sell real estate or do home mortgages.
Yeah, I assume you're talking about Dave Wallman.
No.
No, you're not. Oh, okay. I thought you were.
David did.
When you said $10,000 a month, I know, that's just the kind of guy that does it.
No, Dave Waldman came about 3 years later.
I see. Well, let me ask you, when you first started off in the business, did you start the old-fashioned way with about an hour of training and throw you out in the street and start hitting realtors, or did you?
That's exactly what I did. I started the old-fashioned way. I sat across the desk from a gentleman in his office, a closed room, with him puffing on cigarettes and me listening to conversations that he was having with other clients and working on an HP 12C, a calculator.
Yeah, so I use one myself even today.
And I watched him, and I couldn't breathe sitting in his office. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to sit here. I'm not making any money sitting here, and I've got to make money. I'm getting married. I've got to go out and make something happen. So I went out on his little IBM dot matrix computer, made a flyer advertising FHA loans, and I went out there and started hitting the pavement, started calling on real estate offices, 14, 15 offices a day, Saturdays and Sundays, going into open houses, doing open house flyers, the absolute old-fashioned way, and truly today, the best way of doing business.
Right. It's funny, you raise an interesting point for our listeners out there, especially for those loan officers that are just getting into business. At a certain, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at a certain fundamental level, there's certain things that don't change with the realtor market, and that is nothing takes the place for persistence, for getting out there, getting face time, working Saturdays and Sundays, doing all the things you say. I don't know of another way to do it that's effective.
Today, because what's happened today is so many real estate offices, and I can't speak for the rest of the country, I can speak for here.
Sure.
There are so many CBAs, control business arrangements, and real estate brokers that have started their own companies, and they have what are called closed offices. So if you can't get into those offices between the hours of 9 to 5, if you will, then you find yourself working the night shift or the early morning shift, and you've got to go out and you've got to go out and start working after 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon when the gatekeeper isn't there, and to get back into the office to talk to people, or you've got to hang around the mail slots, hoping a real estate agent comes back over there, or you've got to be out on Saturdays and Sundays and on caravan days on Wednesdays out here when they're caravanning in order to get face-to-face with them. And nothing will... I don't care if you've been doing this for 20 years or you started doing it last week. You've got to get face-to-face with agents. That's the only way to make money.
Yeah, usually we don't start talk about CBAs until a little later in the deal, but you did raise the issue, so let's get right into it. because I think there's a lot of loan officers out there that are either reasonably new or, just have a year or 2 years experience. They really are experiencing some problems out there with these controlled business arrangements. And to be very honest with you, a lot of the managers out there, I don't think are doing right necessarily by their customers and the way they're steering business to people. And I just wonder if you comment on that a little bit more, also with some maybe some specific ideas of how you work your way around it.
Well, there's no question the CBAs and the in-house lenders, most of your real estate agents prefer not to work with them. But it's the job of the loan officer to find those people that prefer not to work with them, and how do you get to them? And there's no question you're doing the agents and the consumer a crime because the in-house lender they're promoting, a dozen products, or they're exposing the agents to a dozen products, but you've got another 5 dozen products that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you're doing them an injustice by not allowing the office to be open and hearing what everybody else has to offer. As far as getting through the gatekeeper and getting to these agents, as I said before, there's several means of doing it, whether it be telephone calls, setting up interviews with the agents, hanging around different parts of the office. If you just get in the office, you can't get past the receptionist, but you can always throw flyers and hang around the mailroom, make coffee, clean up, and an agent will come in to get their mail, and you start conversations. You're out on caravan day, and you've got a slew of agents that are going into the open houses. You go and you mingle with them there, and you speak with them there, and you set times where you could go to lunch with them and come in and talk to them and share with them what you have to offer and why you could be of better service to them. And the best way in the world is the Saturdays and Sundays, is to go out there and meet them while they're sitting open houses. And that has always been, for me, my best way of making contact with the people, because you can talk to them and they'll listen to you.
I agree on that. When I was doing it a long time ago, I used to find that it was kind of a two-edged sword with an open house. The good part of the open house is that if there was no one there, they would talk to you all day long. Right. And the flip side, though, is you had to be smart enough to realize that if someone walked through that door, you better disappear. Because they needed to do their dog and pony show, and would even resent it. And I was young and stupid, kind of hanging around and everything. And of course, they're trying to make their hit, and you're sitting there blabbing away and taking time up.
Well, there's no question you have to be smart enough to know that. But and once you figure that out, if you're going to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 open houses on whether it be a Saturday and Sunday or Sunday, the nice thing is on that Saturday and Sunday also, in your real estate offices, you don't have that gatekeeper. And probably 70% of the business that's done is done on Saturdays and Sundays within the real estate offices. That's when the customer's out there looking at homes. And even the in-house lenders, they're generally not sitting there on the weekends. They're at home with their families and, or out water skiing, doing whatever it is that they do. And they're not sitting in the office waiting for a pre-qual to come in or for a real estate agent to refer a walk-in or somebody that they're showing property to for a first time. The in-house lender generally is not there on your Saturdays and Sundays, so that's the opportunity to not only be in your open houses, but to be in your real estate offices also.
Yeah.
Because you do have the opportunity to walk the office.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now that is slowly turning a little bit as some of the CBAs and some of the better ones, one of the better ones in the Washington metropolitan area is Prosperity Mortgage, which is owned by Long & Foster. Actually, it's a joint venture with Norwest, too. But when that first started off, that's exactly the way it worked. They weren't very good, not as talented, and didn't spend a lot of weekends. And now that's changing, and they happen to have a really good person, a fellow named Herb Engler, who's real good,
right.
And that's changing. But I agree with you. I think overall these CBAs, they don't get the quality of loan officer. They don't get that drive.
Right. They're working for a reduced buck, and that's why. Because everybody's got their hands out on them. Quite often it's very similar working for a builder. When you're doing a builder business, quite often everyone's got their hand out. Now with a builder, the volume is much greater. You can afford to work for less. But working with real estate agents, your deal here, your deal there, it's very difficult, and the interest gets lost very, very quickly. And it's the minority that's the great real estate agent that's working the CBA in the real estate office, not the majority.
Yeah.
It's very rare where you find a very talented person that's doing it.
Yeah, and there's something else too. I think you've indirectly hit too, and and the reason I bring it up is for the listeners out there, especially the new people, and that is real estate agents. Sometimes they don't get enough credit. Sometimes they get too much credit. But in one area they don't get enough credit is that they really do consider themselves independent contractors, and the ones who really crank some volume and do well. They could care less what a manager says. They consider themselves independent, and they're going to place that loan wherever they want, and they get away with it.
Absolutely. They're going to direct it wherever they want to direct it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and when you agree that there's a lot of young loan officers out there that probably don't understand that the psychology of some of the realtors out there that are really good realtors, they probably just kind of roll over on it.
Well, because I think the loan officers are taught that that there's certain channels that you have to go through, in being professional, if you will. Whereas you have to meet the gatekeeper, you've got to talk to the manager, and 95% of the time, the gatekeeper or the receptionist or the manager, they're just going to shut you down, and then all of a sudden you've got an office of 125 agents with maybe 50 possibilities of doing business with, 75 possibilities of that 125 agents, whereas right off the bat, you walk in, you're shut down, and you walk away from absolute opportunity.
Right.
So you can't stop there.
Yeah, I'm glad you're talking about this because of all the interviews that I've done, and I don't think we've really mentioned this, and every interview brings something new to the table, and that is you really have to kind of get almost into kind of a guerrilla marketing, taking no prisoners and just saying this is crap,
right,
and just go after them.
What's the, I don't know, it may have been Todd Duncan or one of the guru speakers that said it takes 9 tries to get through, or 9 no's to get a yes. And, just because you get shut down once, don't stop. If you get shut down twice, you can't stop. And I like the way you just put it, is that guerrilla attitude. You've got to keep going, because you're going to break down the wall. You've got to be persistent. And in this business, it's very easy to put your tail between your legs and walk away.
Right. I think all of us, excuse me, I think all of us, probably you included, me, over the years, you do get a little intimidated at times. It's Friday afternoon, you maybe had a rough week or whatever, and you go in that office, and you almost kind of get scared of going in knowing what you're going to hit, but that's when you need to get to that next level. Yep. And just say this is, BS, and just forge ahead.
And there's living proof all around. If it's a new guy that's listening to this, hopefully, there's all around you, there is so much opportunity and so much success all around. All you've got to do is want it. And in this business, it's an absolute. You can have it. You could have everything you want. Everything. You could have all the success, all the money, all the acknowledgement, everything in the world in this business. It's just there. It's there for you to take. Literally, it's there for you to take. And there's thousands of real estate agents that are out there that are willing to give it to you. There's hundreds of builders out there that are willing to give it to you. All you've got to do is get to them.
You know what's kind of interesting? I was talking to someone yesterday, and I thought the theme kind of fits in here nicely. We were talking about the fact that the mortgage banking business doesn't have a lot of buzz, for example, within the senior college graduate community. Everybody wants to go internet and high tech and whatever. However, as we discussed yesterday, and I'll pose to you, where else can you go as a 26-year-old kid, really, and within a couple of years be making a 6-figure income, and not only that, be in a business that's an annuity business, which is the rarest and the hardest and the best business of all. There is nothing that takes the place of an annuity income, and that's essentially what our business is.
Absolutely. I don't know where else you can go. And if you go to sell insurance, it takes you 10 to 12 years until you start getting things going.
Right.
Whereas in the mortgage business, I was fortunate. I don't want to say times were different because they weren't. When I got into business in 1988, I was told that you've got to be absolutely crazy to even think about getting in this business today. It's so difficult, it's so competitive, so on and so forth. And in a matter of 6 months, I was making $4,000 to $5,000 a month. 6 months after I got into the business, consistently. And it was a year after that I went right into double digits, and I haven't turned back since.
I was talking. This fellow I was talking to yesterday is a branch manager, and he has kind of a droll sense of humor, very on message though, very intelligent. You can tell by talking to him. And he was kind of musing, and I thought it was kind of interesting, the speculation. He said, and this is a guy that does between 30 and 50 million, depending on the kind of effort he wants to put in it. And he's sitting there saying, I never really even get out to my offices anymore, which a lot of top loan officers don't now. But,
Correct.
And he said, if someone was smart, they could just go out and just steal all my business within a couple of years.
It's true.
And if you think about it, he wasn't trying to be funny, he just had a kind of a droll sense of humor. But there was a fundamental underlying truth to that there is business to be had out there, and a lot of the fat and happy people, they're sitting out there and they're taking the phone calls, and they're actually very vulnerable.
Right. But I don't want to say I'm smarter than the next guy, but it's very
go ahead.
to protect your world, if you will. And you know something? If you get out and you see one office a day, or you see one of your agents a day, because I don't work with 40 different real estate agents. I work with a handful of real estate agents. Over the years, these are the people that feed me. But technology brought us something many, many years ago, in the computer. And somebody developed something within the computer, a software program called a database. And the database, you put your customers. The customers is something that you could do what's called a mail merge. You do a mail merge, you can stay in front of your customers on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis by sending them a newsletter, just a hi letter, a postcard, anything. Your customers are going to keep coming back and they're going to keep referring. All you have to do is stay in front of them, and if you get out with your real estate agent once a week, once every couple weeks, a telephone call, a lunch, a hi, how are you protect them for the rest of your life.
Right, and you raise an interesting point. It hadn't been beaten to death, but it's certainly been well discussed. The value of using something like the ACK, which I use and many other people do. If you're new out there, you need to create some sort of a fundamental database, whether it's ACK or Goldmine, who cares what it is,
right.
Just so you have something. Because I was doing, and I've now done so many interviews, I can quote other interview pieces, but I was talking to someone a couple of days ago, I was interviewing the guy, and he said, you won't believe this. He said, the guy's been in business over 30 years. He said, I got a call from somebody that I have been in touch with for 28 years, which of course begged the question what it cost for this lead, but I didn't have it in me to ask him that. But he had somebody called after 28 years, and he said, I really appreciate getting that yearly thing that you send me every year.
Right. And, in starting in the business, I never with stockbrokers get into the business, they want you to go out and they want you to hustle your parents and your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, what have you. Whereas in this business, you're really not hustling them, because in starting your database, start your database with family, with brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, moms, dads, what have you, and send them the newsletter. All you're doing is letting them know that you're in the business, whether it be for them or they all have friends and they're talking over dinner, over cocktails, or at church or a temple or whatever circles they're in, and the conversation of real estate will come up, which it does in so many different conversations. And hey, I've got a cousin that's in the business, and it's a very subtle way of just letting everybody know that this is what you're doing, and your family should be a part of your database.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another way of starting your business off.
Let's talk something tangential to this, and that is pricing and rate sheets. And how do you feel about pricing in itself as a sales tool? Do you worry about pricing? Do you consider it? Do you cut your price? And do you use rate sheets?
I think everybody with the world of the internet today is very price sensitive. So I am one of few, which so many people, they believe and they swear that rates are so not important. I do believe that rates are important. I do believe that you have to be competitive, and I do believe as a way of starting off, or if you're in a mode of trying to build business and you're throwing flyers, because I am a believer in throwing flyers, whether it be leaving them in mailboxes or leaving them on desks, because exposure is everything. You've got to get out there. You've got to get people to know that you're there and that you care and that you have a product. I believe that you have to. I don't know how to say this.
Well, let me try. Let me put something in your mind there as you're talking about it. Are you saying that it's not the price per se, because prices change, within the hour today? It's the fact that you're getting out there and at least putting something in front of their face. That's more important.
Absolutely. And I've always thrown rate sheets, and whether it be a complete rate sheet with conforming and non-conforming and government and city programs. I've always thrown those, and I've always thrown very specific ones. I've always thrown successful closings. I just recently closed a transaction for Ken and Barb Heller at Coldwell Banker at 125 Hope Street, and letting other people know that you're closing loans for top real estate agents. So it's when you've got flyers, you've got a couple thousand flyers circulating, and you've got whether it be a new real estate agent or any real estate agent looking at it, and they see, wow, Gilman's closing loans for the Hellers and for the Stevenson team and for the Curtis team and for these people. Wow, he must be doing something right. He's closing these, the big hitters' loans.
That's it. You're the first person ever to bring that up.
What's that?
You're the first person to bring that little tack up.
Well, you know who I learned that from? A good friend of mine, David Waldman. And but if you think about it, people want to associate themselves with successful people. And if a loan officer is doing loans for successful real estate agents, why would a real estate agent that either one is successful, an up-and-comer, or a rookie want to associate themselves with the person that's doing business with the big hitters? So you're letting everybody know Gilman's closing loans for the Curtis team, for the Heller team, for this team, for that team.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you something. When you get up into that $50 million level, there really is a separation between those people, and I'm not just talking numerically either, between those people out there that are doing 15 or 20 million a year, and they do it every year, and they make an okay living and everything, but they can't seem to get to that level that you're at. And so I wondered if you would maybe concentrate on what is it that you do specifically, leaving aside the referral business that obviously comes back over the years. I don't want to talk about that right now. But, how can you go from 20 to 50 million out there when so many people get stuck at that 20 million level?
I think more than anything, it's consistency and desire. You have to consistently do the basics. You have to return phone calls. You have to be competitive. You never want to overpromise and underdeliver. It all goes back to the basics. And once you've reached that $15, $20 million level, and you're making your $150,000, $200,000, whatever it might be, a lot of people are very comfortable with that. It's a good living. Let's call it spade a spade. It's a good living. But you know what? It's a lot better living to double that. And so all you have to do is keep working the same way you're working. You find that your customer becomes a better customer. Your loan amounts go up. So you're not necessarily working that much harder. You're working more efficiently. And you might have an assistant that's working with you now to help you reach that other level, that's taking care of some of your database management, some of your mailings, some of your phone calls that come in. You're not hiding behind anything. You're out there doing what you do, or doing what I do, going out there and getting business, because that's my job. My job is to go out there and get business, make relationships, make things happen, help people, quote-unquote, reach the American dream.
Well, at that $50 million level, too, you obviously run into a time wall. And so my next question to you is, how do you manage your time efficiently? Obviously, to do that kind of volume, you have to.
You prioritize. Like anything else, you prioritize. Everything, aside from my social life, I have to prioritize. When I pick up messages, if I'm in an appointment with somebody for an hour, and I'm paged 9 times, I sit down and I write the 9 messages down. And I say, this one needs to be called, you put them in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These 3 need to be called right now, and these 6 need to be called after 6 o'clock tonight. And so you make those 3 phone calls, you make the 6. Later on, you block off between 8 and 9:30 at night to set up interviews for the next day or appointments for the next day or, a couple days up the road. It's all prioritizing, and you can't do everything yourself. And that was the hardest thing for me, I think, was to give up control and to let somebody help me, to let somebody take a phone call for me, to let somebody put the package together for me to bring the loan in and for somebody to help me package the loan and get it off into underwriting. That was the hardest thing for me, was to give up control. But I had to do that to reach the next level. I had to.
What kind of internal help do you have? How do you operate yourself? Because if I remember, you're a bit of distance from your office, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm about 35 miles from my office. I actually work out of my home. I have somebody come in my home and help me for a couple hours a day, doing mostly computer database management, my mailings and what have you. I have my own processor. I don't share with anybody. And I have my own underwriter. My business warrants that. But I also process out of 2 different locations. I process and underwrite out of 2 different locations because I do a split business. I do a realtor business, and I do a builder business. So I have 2 teams of people, if you will. I have 2 processors in 2 different locations, and I have 2 underwriters in 2 different locations.
Let's switch. You said the magic word, builders. Let's talk about builders. And I guess my first question to you, since you do builder business, what do you notice that's different with builders and going after builder business for our listeners out there?
What's different with builder business?
Between that and realtors, I mean, there is a fundamental cycle.
A builder can make you very, very wealthy in a very short period of time. But they can also take away your livelihood just as fast as a refinance wave can. You never want to put all your eggs in a builder basket, even if you're a builder-only person. Because if Centex Homes, I think they're a national builder.
Yeah, they are.
If you're doing Centex Homes in Southern California and you're working on 3 tracks out here and you've got 140 units, once those 140 units are gone, if Centex isn't building anything, they've just taken a year and a half of your life that you've put everything into. You've made yourself a bundle of money, but then where do you go? You're starting all over again. You've got to start developing relationships because you've lost them all over the past year and a half. And if you don't have another builder in your hip pocket, or if you don't have somebody else there because you've worked 10, 12, 14 hours a day to keep this builder happy, to keep up with the volume of business that you were doing, you're out of business, and you're starting all over again. So it's so important to manage your time and manage your customer. Builder business is a wonderful, wonderful business because that there's so much from one, but you can't live on one forever. You have to either spread it around, or if you have somebody that you're doing that much business with, you've got to relinquish a little bit of it, give up a little bit to a junior loan officer or to another loan officer to help you with it, to help you develop more builders.
There's also a wave. I interviewed somebody not too long ago that does over $100 million a year in a 100% builder business. And one of the things that he's finding now, and he's good enough that he doesn't have to worry about it too much, but I think deep down there is some worry, and that is there's a lot of consolidation going on in the builder business now. And a lot of the smaller builders are getting eaten up, and all of a sudden, to kind of prove your point, all of a sudden you have a relationship with a couple of builders, and next thing you know, they're attached to a larger builder, Ryan or Ryland or whatever.
And then there's a CBA, and you're done.
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
And it's over.
Absolutely. Or even if you're working with the giant builder, and everything's going along, he's just been approached by ABC Financial, that, they're going to kick them back, a buck here, a buck there on a deal or try to develop a CBA. And, the ears go up because all of a sudden, wow, we've got our advertising taken care of, we've got this taken care of, and it's very volatile. To some degree, it's no different than the realtor business.
Mm-hmm.
It could be very, very volatile.
Except if you lose a realtor, there's always a large pool of them out there. At least if you spread yourself out a bit.
You lose a builder, you lose 100 units.
That's right, exactly. Well, what about in terms of approaching a builder for the listeners out there? Do you believe in going out and hitting the tracks and talking to salespeople to build a builder business, or are you more go right to the builder himself and work on the
builder? You have to handle a little bit different. I've always started with the tracks where you see who's out there. Again, it's just using a name that everyone knows, Centex Homes. If Centex has a development in my area, or 3 developments in my area, first thing I need to know is I need to go in the track and see what it is. Is it a non-conforming product? Is it a government product? Is it a conforming product? See what it is that they have to offer, and see who they're working with, and see what kind of product they're offering. You develop a relationship with the salesperson, who then hopefully will, if not recommend you to the sales and marketing director, then you go to the sales and marketing director yourself, because you have something different or better, or even if it's the same, you feel you could do a better job. So I've always felt more comfortable starting at the track, because that gives me the knowledge to go to the sales and marketing director and talk very knowledgeably on the product itself. Because I'm talking about the 3 products in Thousand Oaks or Ventura County.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, with knowledge wins always. If you're knowledgeable, if you know what you're talking about, people are going to listen to you. If you just come in and just start throwing stuff against the wall, who's going to listen to you?
Right. Which
There's a level of respect that's taken from somebody that knows.
Mm-hmm. Do you still go out and hit the tracks yourself now?
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. And I have 4 tracks right now, and I've got 3 more that are opening with 1 builder. But that doesn't keep me one out of the real estate offices. It does not stop my relationships that I have with the real estate agents that I've worked with. And if a new track with another developer opens next door or up the street or in the same community, I'm always going in there because I want them to know I'm the guy that's handling this track. I'm part of the reason for the success of this track. So you might want to work with me also. If you're not, this is who you're working with. But no, I'm here. I know the area. I know the buyer. I know what's in this area. And I won't call on a track that's 75 miles away from me. Where a lot of people do. A lot of people schlep 100 miles. They spend the weekend out. They do applications over the telephone. That's not my way of doing business. I'm a face-to-face person. I still do to this day 95% of my applications face-to-face.
Well, there's a theory in sales, and one that's pretty old and also very fundamental, that basically says the further away you get from a prospect, the less chance you have of closing, which sounds like kind of a duh statement, but there is a fundamental fact that looking someone in the face, you have a much better opportunity than if someone is on the phone. I mean, if those listeners out there, someone calls you on the phone at dinner time, you don't know who the heck they are. The easy is 1, 2, 3 to kind of blow them off. Yet if someone came to your door and knocked, and you would have a much harder time, saying no to somebody.
Right, but technology has taken so much of the people out of the business, and I don't feel you could ever replace people for technology.
Right.
You can, and not in this business, because there's too much money that you're dealing with. There's too much. You have people that are truly making the largest investments they'll ever make in their life in buying their first home, second home, fourth home, fifth home, whatever it is. They're making a huge investment, whether it be $100,000, $500,000, or $1 million investment. And to make that investment over a computer without really knowing what's going on, I don't care how many times you've done this. Me, myself, in purchasing my own homes and refinancing my own homes, even though I'm in the business, things change, especially for people that are not in this business. The process changes. It's become much simpler today to do business. Some people think that you're not telling them the truth when you take an application and you call them 9 hours later and tell them they're all approved. All I need is your appraisal, or all I need are your escrow instructions, and I could draw your final loan documents. people don't really believe it. So there's so much change that happens in the business, and a computer can't teach you that. A computer cannot educate you. Only a person can.
Well, there's as kind of proof of that, and it's been beat up too much in my other interviews to spend a lot of time on it, and that is the Internet today, where people are really using the Internet for information. Just like when they look for a car purchase, they still want to get out there and bang that door. But a parallel to that, and an area that we haven't talked about in my interviews, is computer loan origination networks. It's a historical fact that I personally created the first CLO in the country for non-Freddie Fannie paper, and that's another story for another time. But I do remember when CLOs, some of the big boys started to get in and do them. At that time, everybody was running around scared to death that CLOs were going to take all the business away. And I always maintain that having somebody face-to-face, and if there's a problem, as I used to say in an appraisal, who are you going to call in Nebraska?
Right, exactly.
And it's people fundamentally, as you said yourself earlier, it's the biggest purchase they're ever going to make. And they want somebody to hold their hand, someone they can get angry at, get happy with, whatever it is. They want to be able to pick up that phone and get a real live person.
No question about it.
Which kind of gets back to the overall thread that runs through all interviews, and that is everything is based on relationships. It's a relationship business, and I think that's the fundamental element in it.
Here, you're right. It goes back to Loan Officer 101. Everything goes back to relationships and the basic way of doing business, and how you get your business, how you manage your business, and how you work your business through. There is a very basic way of doing it, but everybody looks for a shortcut. Everybody looks for an angle of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could just keep your focus, which is very hard to do. We all fall out of focus, but if you could not fall out too far and just find yourself coming back in, you can't not be successful in this business.
Yeah. What do you do? You said something kind of interesting that struck me. What happens when you do? What do you do when you fall? You use the words fall out of focus. I just say you either get lazy or all of a sudden the things you're doing just don't seem to work anymore or whatever. What do you do to kind of pull yourself back in?
Things that you're doing don't seem to work anymore. You always look at yourself and you say, "What am I doing wrong?" And it's not that what you're doing wrong is that you're reinventing the wheel. And I find that 100% of the time, it's that I'm trying to cut a corner here, I'm trying to get slick, I'm trying to do something different. And that's not what made me or brought me to where I am today, is by doing things different, yes, but by my way of doing things is the basic way of doing things. And when I start cutting corners, when I start getting fancy, when I start getting hotsy-totsy, is when everything falls apart. And it sometimes takes me a day, it sometimes takes me a week, a month and a half till I realize, and I hit myself in the head and I say, "Why are you doing this?" And I find myself, I put myself right back into focus, and I start moving forward again.
Yeah, I think one of the differences between successful loan originators and those that aren't so successful is the fact that all of us go through slumps. I mean, I can even remember one or two myself, and it's well over 20 years ago,
right,
where I really went in I went in for like 3 months. I thought I was, losing my marbles.
Right.
And I think the difference between someone who's successful and someone who's not is the ability to recognize that you analyze yourself, you see what you're doing wrong, you get out there and go back to the basics. I did an interview with a fellow named Don Ehrman for SunTrust, and he does he does 2 loans a day every day, and he has for a long time. And he goes out, and the way he does it for himself, he buys every sales tape he can get his hands on, and he religiously spends between 5 and 10 hours every single week kind of re-educating himself.
Right.
I thought that was kind of interesting. That's what worked for him. For somebody else, it may be writing stuff down on a piece of paper and figuring out what you're doing wrong, or ask a contemporary.
Right.
But they have that ability to pull themselves out of it.
Well, and I think for me, well, you hit it right on the head, and that's been the only difficult part of working out of my home is working with a contemporary, or working with or being surrounded by peers, because I get my input from talking to other loan officers. I love talking to other people, finding out where they're doing business, who they're doing business with, and how they're doing business. And I believe that there is plenty of room in this business for everybody. So I'm never out there to steal anybody's business, but I'm out there to learn what they're doing and how they're doing it. And that's what keeps me excited, and that's what keeps me pumped up, is by listening to other people within my own company. And sure, I talk to the other loan officers out there. I'm a very friendly competitor. But I love talking to other people and hearing what they're doing, how they put the deal together, how they got this realtor, how they got this builder, how they handle their database, the marketing materials that they send out to their people. That's where I get mine from. I love the success of others.
Yeah.
And again, the Todd Duncans, all the tapes in the world are wonderful, but I can't ask a tape a question. And I'm a question asker. I like asking questions. And,
well, that's kind of, that's the fundamental, kind of Socratic method of learning, which is one of the great methods of learning. Some feel it's the only real way, is the ability to ask a question, and that's how you learn, through that interchange, whether you're teaching at law school using the Socratic method or however. It's learning by just having a dialogue back and forth, teacher talking to the student. And you're right, and there's nothing different from what you're doing than the Socratic method, really.
And that's where I got my knowledge. I mean, I shared with you one of my marketing things that I do in real estate office. I learned that from one of the most successful mortgage people there are, and that was a friend of mine, David Waldman. And our customers are completely different customers, geographically completely different. Even when we were sharing an office together, our customer was different. And I found that to be a brilliant way of marketing and advertising. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how many comments I got from it. And, sure, there'd be jokes, you're copying my marketing, you're copying my advertising. Well, yeah, I am. And, then the flip side, he did stuff that I did. And, you play off each other.
Yeah.
And what works for him may not work for me, but it may work for me.
Right, and I think there's something fundamental there too, because the people who are successful, they will take something from somebody that looks like it works. They'll try it, but the really smart ones, if it doesn't work for them, they'll drop it. The stupid people just kind of keep on going because it sure worked for Jimmy.
Absolutely, there's been plenty of stuff that I've dropped. Plenty. There's so many ways and mean of getting business. Some people, it works working with CPAs. Some people, it works working with business managers. Some people with attorneys. Some people with realtors. Some people with builders.
I had a great interview with someone who gets business from stockbrokers. They developed an interesting niche where they go to stockbrokers, and of course stockbrokers are very concerned with getting control of as much money as they can. So his shtick is, he goes in and he says, look, I got a couple programs here where people can put no money down. And all of a sudden their eyes light up that all of a sudden they're going to get that 20% down payment.
Because
and
they're
now
not going to get the money from their brokerage account.
Right.
Absolutely. I've got there seems to be a lot of accountants in this business, people that are, whether they're CPAs or EAs, people that are accountants in this business. And I've got a friend of mine in the city who, he was a CPA for 4 years, and he couldn't stand it. He just hated it with a passion. And he looked around him and he saw, within his firm, which was a large firm, that there was a mortgage broker in the office that was doing all the business within the office, that the CPAs referred the business to him for their customers to purchase or refinance or whatever it might be. And when he decided he was going to get out of business, he went to the owner of the company, and he told him that I'm leaving, I'm starting my own mortgage company, and I would like to be this guy. Well, he became that guy. but that was the start of it. He made his business of working exclusively with CPAs and business managers. He does not work with any real estate agents at all. Zero. 100% of his business comes from now past clients, but it's 100% CPAs and business managers.
Wow.
All his business, it works. He was able to communicate with these people on their level. And that's where, now me, I've tried to get business from CPAs and business managers. Didn't work for me. So I dropped it.
Yeah, me neither. Didn't work for me either.
Didn't work for me. But it's a incredibly lucrative way of doing business. Incredibly lucrative. But it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
It worked for him, and all the power to him. I raised my hand to the guy.
Do you have any ways or any business that you bring that's kind of outside the box? People like title attorneys, or do you have any little niches that you kind of developed over the years that you would recommend?
Unfortunately not. A very traditional way of doing business.
Mm-hmm.
I do business with builders, with realtors, and with my past customers. And that all by itself keeps me very, very busy.
What about the customers? I do want to spend, we're kind of getting near the end here, but I would like to spend a couple minutes talking about the people that are past customers, and what do you, I would imagine, I'll just take a rough hand guess that 30, 35, maybe more percent now is coming from referrals.
You've been nailed it, 30 to 35%.
Yeah, well, let me ask you something. Let me ask you something. How do you make that part happen? Because you don't keep in touch. You don't do some fundamental things. They're going by the wayside too.
Well, here? Okay, I do keep in touch every quarter. I'm a quarterly guy. Every quarter, I send something out. So every 3 months, I'm sending something out.
What do you send out?
I send out a newsletter. I send out a letter that I've drafted. If rates are trickling down, I'll do a 0-point refinancing as to that these are rates you may want to refinance. But what's been very, very successful over the past couple of years has been equity lines of credit, home equity lines. See, that's the beauty of this business. You've always got something new to talk about. And with your existing customers also, a lot of your existing customers, if they were young 9 years ago, they're not so young today, and they may have had baby children then, which are growing up children, and those children are now looking to buy houses. So you can always talk to them about low down payments, whereas you may want to help your kids buy their first house, or your kids may be thinking about buying their first house, or you may want your kids to buy their first house. Get them out of your house and move them on. Kids that are, parents that have kids that are going to college or finishing college.
Mm-hmm.
Home equity lines of credit have become a tremendous thing, where...
in the sense that you're doing them, or...
In doing them, yep. I mean, so many people, 3, 4, 5 years ago, didn't have home equity lines, or we didn't have the 80-10-10s like we do today, the 80-15-5.
Yeah, right.
The zero down payments. We didn't have those. What a huge thing to talk about, that you could put on a home equity line for somebody at no cost, no fees. We're still making a buck, and whether they use it or not, they could have it attached to their house just in case. Get rid of that credit card that they're paying 12, 18% interest on, and tie it to a home equity line of credit that you could pay prime rate. You pay prime plus something and make it tax deductible. You always have new things to talk about in this business to your existing customers, even the people you did loans for 3 months ago.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing that with car loans now. They're, instead of going out to a bank and getting a car loan, they're using home equity so they can write off their taxes.
You can't, absolutely. For your average wage earner, you've got no write-offs but your home. Now you can write off your car. Absolutely. No question about it. You make your payments are so much less on the equity line. You make additional payments, and you still have a 5-year loan.
Mm-hmm. So you're getting hold of everybody at least 4 times a year.
Yes, I am.
Mm-hmm. Do you purge your database, or do you just let it roll?
No, if I do a new loan for somebody, I purge it just so I have updated information.
Mm-hmm. Are you using ACT or any of the other majors, or are you using a spreadsheet?
I'm a dinosaur, so I use Microsoft Works, which...
wow, yeah, you are.
I use Microsoft Works, and It does not have a very good contact. It really doesn't even have a contact manager in it. It's basically a spreadsheet database, and but it enables me to mail merge through. There's three programs in one. It's a spreadsheet, a database, and a word processor. And so within the word processor, I do my labels, and I can mail merge letters within that. And for me to take my what do I have in there? Some 1,500 names in there. For me to take that and to transfer it into ACT and relearn it, that works just fine for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what, you know. I guess it all gets down to at least you're doing something, and what you're doing is it makes it, you know, it's working.
You have to have a database.
Yeah.
When people call you, when Mr. Smith calls you, you have the computer on. You go to Mr. Smith, and you're having a conversation. You're looking at it, and I did a $300,000 loan for you 2 years ago. You probably owe $190,000 today, and your home was worth $450 then. It's probably worth $525 today. This is how much equity you have. You know, you could, you know, just in the 5-minute, 10-minute conversation, you know a whole lot about this person. You know the wife's name. You know his name. You know the address of the property, when you did the loan, at what interest rate you did it for, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
You got the information at your fingertips. You don't have to fumble through.
And you know, you're talking real dollars here. And I was talking to somebody, I guess maybe half a year ago, and he was lamenting the fact he'd been in the business almost as long as me, and he was lamenting the fact that he only really started a database about 2 years ago. And what he stupidly did is that he was with the company for a long time, didn't do any of that, you know, making a good living, and then he changed companies, and all of a sudden he didn't have access to anything. And all those years, I think he told me he had like 16 or 17 years of data that he had never really put together. The calls would come in. You know, he left the company, persona non grata. They didn't know he existed when people called in, and he just lost all that business.
Absolutely. And that's where I think that goes along with what I said earlier, that was the hardest thing for me, was to give up control and to rely on other people, and it's relying on a company. I don't care if it's a mom and pop shop or the largest mortgage company in the country.
Yeah, well, I think for our listeners out there, not to belittle the companies that you work for, but you know, people, loan officers in particular, have to keep in mind that they need to get their presence and their picture and their relationship out there. I mean, you have a company relationship, obviously. There's an ethical and moral one, but you've got to get your face out there too. And
once you've done a loan for somebody, they're your customer.
Right.
They're your customer. And you want to take, because that customer, the relationship is up to you what you develop. If you develop the relationship as being ABC Mortgage's company, they're going to be ABC's company, customer. If you develop that relationship, is that it's you that's making this deal happen. It's you that's getting him the best rate. It's you that's giving him the great service. They're coming back to you, and they're your customer. And they're telling their brother, sister, aunt, uncle, friend, whatever, that, hey, Scott did a great job for me. Not ABC Mortgage did a great job for me. Scott did a great job.
Yeah.
And it's Scott that's sending him a letter. And, of course, I work for North American Mortgage and proud of working for North American Mortgage.
Yeah, they're a good company.
They're a great company. And but it's Scott that made it happen under the umbrella of North American Mortgage. So North American is on everything that I send out. Everything. But Scott Gilman is bold. Scott Gilman is big and bold.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a dichotomy there, because I think there's indirectly something to say to the companies out there, the mortgage companies, and that is, if you take care of your people and if you run a professional organization, your people are going to stay. And if you don't, they're not going to be there, and they're going to take their customers with them.
Because your customers do come back. Customers are loyal, and if you've done a good job for them, they're always going to give you the first shot in a year, in 5 years,
right.
In your case, 28 years.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Years, they're going to give you that shot.
Yeah, and I think I kind of like to end the interview on that. I think that's a real good point in developing relationships, and I think it's been a really nice interview. I enjoyed it immensely. I think you had a lot of good points. You're obviously a very intense, hardworking person, I don't know how you can do 50 million without being intense, but I mean, you come across as intense, and I think I think it's infectious for people out there to listen to people like you. It gets them motivated.
Well, you have to have passion. I don't care if it's in your personal life, in your business life. You have to have passion in what you're doing.
Yeah, and you do. And I want to thank you very much, Scott, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you so much.
Okay.